This week I had the absolute pleasure of sitting down with Dr. LaurenJane, who is a doctor that I went to medical school with. She is an absolute powerhouse. You're going to love this interview. Not only is she a surgeon, but she's also a mother of three and she's an author. So we sat down and discussed all things burnout. We talked about Manolos and motherhood and medicine. You are going to really enjoy this interview. So make sure you give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment with your support for Dr. LaurenJane down below. She has her own YouTube channel as well, which I'll link in the description box, and I hope you enjoy this interview. So welcome, LaurenJane. It's so nice to see you on here. I wanted to ask you some questions today because I know your story. I know that you've been through so much. I know you're an incredible woman, and I'm always in awe of you. And you are one of those people that I use as an example many times over, because I just think the way you live your life is fabulous. I wanted to invite you on here to share your story, for people to get to know you, to follow you on YouTube, because I know you've got a YouTube channel as well. And yeah, for my Thriving Medics Club members to hear more about you and hopefully be as inspired by you as I am. So welcome.
Thank you. I think you were the person who first told me about 10 years ago. You were like, people are really interested in you. You need to talk about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of started the surgical doctor, was from that point, really. It's always been you, Sarah.
Oh, that's so kind. Well, it's absolutely true, and I mean every word of it. I'm just gonna open up the floor for you to tell a bit of your story, whatever you want to share.
So I think what has always separated me from the majority of people has been that my background has had some very strange elements in it. So like a lot of current doctors today, I came from a working class background, so first to university in my family. So I think a lot of us have that these days. That's not unusual. But I really kind of messed around at school. I dropped out. I was working in banking at one point. I had a child and I was in a really abusive relationship. And at some point along this journey, I decided that I wanted to go to medical school. So I worked really hard. It took years and years and years. So it's kind of something that we come back to later, and that I really have been on the grind with medicine since about 2010. That was when I started studying for the GAMSAT. And because I didn't have a science background, studying for the GAMSAT was really difficult for me, because I just had no basis in kind of physics or chemistry. So that was, I was working 60, 70 hours a week, even at that point. And then I was in an abusive relationship. It was really soul destroying, that relationship. It lasted for 7 years. And we had a child. And then in 2013, I think, got into medical school. And I loved medical school. I was really happy there, but I was kind of juggling having a 15-month-old and all of the chaos that was going in this relationship. And we got to May of that first year. And I mean, Sarah will remember, but anyone who's done graduate entry medicine, the structure of that course is that you're doing 4 years and you're doing 5 years in 4 years. So those first years are really stressful. And that relationship broke down. And George and I didn't have anywhere to live. We didn't have anywhere to go. And concurrently, my dad got diagnosed with cancer, and he began kind of a period of a year of dying. And managing that alongside Jem, alongside managing, a 15-month-old, the pressure of that was just incredible. And for anyone who's been through a loved one dying, that process is just awful. It's worse than the death itself, because all the time you're constantly thinking, my loved one is going to die, especially if this is the first person you've ever lost, and it's going to be the worst pain I've ever felt in my life, and that's coming, and that this person is suffering. And then you're kind of, trying to manage a medical degree as well, which in itself is, so difficult to do. And so my initial journey to medicine has always been kind of fraught with all of these different I sort of think of them as broken windows, like all of these kind of things that let kind of, torrents of storm into your home. And, I got through it. I pushed forward. My dad died he died in the December of 2014, so it's 10 years this year. And he died at the hospital that I currently work in, which always presents a challenge, which we might come back to later. I separated with my partner, And unfortunately, that led to about somewhere between 5 and 7 years of litigation through the courts, which not only was incredibly expensive, we spent about £70,000, but also, again, was more that you're trying to juggle on top of the medical degree, as well as having a child. And whenever I talk about this, it always seems to resonate with people, because even though your story is not necessarily the same as mine, I think people resonate with the idea that, I mean, no one's life is perfect. Everyone's always got something going on, whether it be a broken relationship or a sick parent or fraught relationships with someone else, money worries. So many of us are juggling these concurrent issues alongside medicine. And I think one of the problems that we have is that medicine just hasn't caught up with that. And I think medicine exists in a period where, kind of like 1950 or 1960, where your doctor is, like this 20-year-old guy who lives in the hospital and he doesn't have any responsibilities, or he's got a wife and she's a stay-at-home wife who manages everything for him. And that is kind of where medicine is, but that is not where we are. And so I went through medical school, and kind of, obviously by this point, my dad has passed away and I'm kind of healing from that. And the issues with George's father settled off, which was great. And so you kind of find your footing, and I did find my footing, and I did well at medical school. And I always want to say that, because a lot of people think that, people always think that because I have a child or because I had all of these things going on, that I was kind of struggling. And actually, you can find your footing and you can do well. And I think that's really important to say. You're not always going to be the top of the class, and that's fine, because one of the issues that I think we have with medicine, and I really hate this about medicine, is no one understands what it's like to be us. So Sarah, you know what it's like to go to med school. My husband is incredibly supportive. He does not know what it's like to be a doctor. He does not know the strain of having gone through medical school. It is unique. The only people that can relate to us are people who've been through this process. But then what do? They pit us against each other. And so when you're at medical school, because you're always thinking about rankings, people are sometimes nervous about study groups. They want to sometimes keep back study materials because they need to do better on the OSCE than you do. And that has always been something that I've always found incredibly lonely, because you're isolated from those people who you desperately, desperately need. And that was one of the things that I found really challenging. But we got through that. We got through med school. I went through foundation, and that was brilliant. And there's always a stress for me because my son is in school, so I need to try and stay in my location. But there's no facility for that. You kind of just have to rank higher than everyone else. So it's always been incredible. It's important for everyone to rank highly, but that's always been an additional pressure for me to rank highly enough that I can stay here for his schooling. And I did core surgical training, and I worked really hard for that. And again, I managed to rank exactly where I wanted to be. And I had a baby, and I returned to work a month ago. And then, so during maternity leave, you can't prep for your core surgical application, your ST3 application. And then I came back, and I was aware that my ST3 application opens in December. And then I start meeting all these registrars who are saying, I had to take 3 trust grade registrar years, and I had to move across the country to do them. And you have to do a master's degree, and that costs £20,000. And you have to do this course, and you have to do that course, and you have to do so many papers, the Lancet, just throw in one of those, and you need to do an audit. And so about a couple of weeks ago, I just stopped sleeping. And it wasn't like a worry. I didn't feel stressed, really, that I was aware of. I just stopped sleeping. And I don't mean tossing and turning through the night. I mean, it was like abject insomnia. And at this point, I just had to be thinking, something's gone a bit wrong here. And that never usually happens to me. I'm very good at managing myself. And so since then, I've been reflecting on kind of how we've gotten to this point. And so I've taken a week off, and that's my starting point. And this is where we are at the moment.
Thank you for sharing that. And, I know your story and still get chills every time I hear you talking about what you've been through and how you've risen above all the challenges that you've faced. I think a lot of people in your position would have probably said, no, this is too much. You were sharing on your Instagram stories, and you've mentioned it today, about having this week off after having stopped sleeping. Obviously, horrible that you're in that position. But from my perspective, it's so great to hear you talking about that openly online, because I feel there's a real stigma around taking time off, especially when it's for something mental health related, or, our well-being related, rather than like, oh, I've broken my arm. Thank you for being open about that and for being willing to share that, because I think so many people need to hear it. We need to hear that it is okay and it is safe for our
Yeah.
like it's for safety of our patients
Yeah.
to be able to do that. So thank you. In terms of like your mindset and your resilience, what do you think has given you the mental strength to be able to get through everything that you have been through?
It all relates to kind of what we were saying about taking a week off. So usually I wouldn't even get as far as stopping sleeping. And I think that's due to the unique pressures of kind of ST3 and what's going on. But I always think about, think about your absolute dream car. So mine would be like an Aston Martin. And so if someone knocks on my door after we finish this conversation, was like, hey, LaurenJane, here's an Aston Martin for you. It's like the best thing ever. I'm going to treat that car really well. Maybe I'm going to build something on the side of the house to keep it out of the wind or rain. I'm going to take it for a service. I didn't pay for it. I got it for free. I'm going to look after this car, and it's going to take me to work, and it's going to take my children to nursery, and maybe we'll go to the seaside, and I'm going to take really good care of that car. I'm not going to rag it around, letting the petrol get really low so that you get all the gunk coming through the engine. I'm not going to, if someone's like, can you move this timber for me? I'm going to be like, can I help you out a different way? Because actually, I don't want you to wreck my car. But in some ways, I don't know if, what resonates with me is kind of the meme that if trees gave out Wi-Fi, we'd plant them everywhere, but because they only give out oxygen, we're not bothered. And it's exactly like that. It's because we take oxygen for granted. We take our bodies for granted. I think of my body like that Aston Martin. It is an incredible piece of machinery that was given to me for free, and I should be treating it like the Aston Martin, not ragging it around, because if I do rag it around, eventually it's going to break down, and then I can't go to work, and I can't look after my children, and I can't take them to school, and I can't take them to the seaside. And so one of the things that I do is I constantly look at the monitors on my Aston Martin kind of dash screen. And I always believe that with burnout, prevention is the best form of treatment. So I have been burned out, and it takes a really long time to recover from that. Like literally, you're not talking about a week off work, you're looking at months, because it can be so difficult once you get to that point to pull yourself up. And so I have been there in burnout, and it's something that I've really learned from, and I want to try and prevent that. So all the time I'm constantly assessing myself, and often if I feel like I've gone too far, I am going to stop and say, hey, I need a week off. Or, because my mental health is really important. And if I take a week now, I'm not taking 6 months next year. And fundamentally, one of the reasons I took the week off, like you said, is patient safety. If you are not 100%, you are going to make a mistake, and you could potentially harm someone. So really, it's crucial that we as healthcare providers are able to say, I need to take a week off, because like you said, if we'd broken a leg, we wouldn't say to the crash team, oh, I'm fine. I'll take the crash call, and I'm going to be down. You would say, I can't safely do this. But we feel, I think, as healthcare providers, that we can't say, I'm not fit and I'm not well to do that. So I think, yeah, that's what I think. I don't know if that was kind of what you were looking for, Sarah. Or...
Absolutely, yeah. And I love the Aston Martin reference.
I have an Aston Martin.
I can totally see you driving around with an Aston Martin.
Yeah, I'm so desperate for it. You'll have to tell me what your car is at some point.
Oh, I don't even know. It would be something fancy like that. I was trying to think when you said it, but when I think one of the other things you haven't mentioned in here in this conversation so far is that you also have a YouTube channel and a flourishing Instagram account, and you also are an author. So as well as all the amazing things that you've got going on with being a mother and being a surgeon and all the other stuff that you've dealt with, you've also got these incredible passions outside of work. So I wonder, how do you find time? How do you find balance?
So I think it's always for everyone, I think, is a struggle to make so many hours fit into one kind of box. So in some ways, work always has to come first because that's what pays the bills. So I'm at 70%, that's what I can manage. And if I begin to struggle, I'll drop that. I'm not afraid to drop that. I do think that we kind of get this rat race drilled into us, like, you need to be a consultant by the time you're 32. That's just not the journey of most people. So in terms of that first priority work, I'm doing it 70% and I'll happily do it. I was at 60% at one point, and if I start to struggle, I'll drop to 15. With my children, it is a struggle because I believe with children, for me as a parent, that I've got 3 children, you can have as many children as you've got time to spend one-on-one time with them. So that's really crucial for me as a parent, that I give them that one-on-one time, and that comes out of my evenings. So that is another thing that takes quite a large proportion of time. With the writing is something that I do just for myself. So that's my hobby. That is the way I kind of let off steam. So for me, it's always about trying to balance. When I think about self-care, there are certain things I just need to slot in there, and it really has to be a priority for me to make sure that I do something that is not productive, which sounds like a silly thing to say, but I feel like I'm like the anti Ali Abdaal, like, stop doing productive things. You are not a machine. We have to do things that aren't for any purpose. And in some ways, my writing has become a bit counterproductive in this regard, because I'm thinking about, I'm trying to get an agent. There's a goal there, which isn't helpful for me at this point. So I've actually started painting, and that is my kind of thing that I do just for myself. And one of the things that's really important to me is, and anyone who knows me knows this, is clothes and shoes are really important to me. And that is because there is absolutely no productivity. There's nothing to be gained from this. It's literally just about making myself happy. And if there's nothing in your week that is just about making yourself happy in a silly way, that you gain nothing else for your career, for your family, then I think you're missing a trick, because you need to have those moments of just, this makes me happy for no other reason than it makes me happy. And so I have painting for that. I kind of have writing that's kind of gone off because it's kind of productive for me now. And I have my clothes. And I try to fit in yoga, but it doesn't always happen. So in terms of work-life balance, I'm always trying to juggle family, work, and having a little squeeze of time in the middle for something that purely makes me happy.
I want you to shout that from the rooftops.
Make yourself happy. You can't do the rest without it. It's so important to not be productive. Like, this is my new name. I'm the anti-Ali Abdaal. Stop doing productive things. We've done enough. It's got to stop.
Yeah, I mean, I love Ali Abdaal, but I often say that I'm saying most of the things I'm saying are the opposite of what he preaches. And that's fine. That's fine.
It's about balance. I think by this point, we've done our productive things. We know how to be productive. Otherwise, we kind of wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So Ali Abdaal, I think, is about the climb. Like, I needed him as a med student. Now I'm going the other way.
Yeah. I think that's it. Yeah, exactly. And like you say, we know how to work hard. Us medics, that's part of what got us to where we are. And we actually need to unlearn a bit of that. We need to learn how to slow down, how to look after ourselves. And I love what you said there about doing things that are just for you, that are just for no other reason other than they make you happy. Just silly things.
Silly. Silly is the word.
Love it. For those people, I don't have kids, and I have a lot of people in my audience who do, and a lot of people in my membership who do. And I wonder if you have any particular strategy help you balance your time and your energy with having kids, even if that's just little things like getting the lunches ready the night before or anything like that. Any tips or advice for other people out there who are parents?
Firstly, you cannot do everything. That is the first thing. I talked earlier about kind of the 1950s housewife. We got at the end of the 20th century, we kind of had this thing where most women sort of left the home, and we decided that we were going to work. But what happened at that point was then everything got more expensive. So no one was able to take a step back. So a lot of households, especially in the UK and in Europe, need to have two people earning. So you have the pressure of carrying that. So most people can't always say, I'm going to go to 50% or whatever, because they've got bills to pay. And that has a knock-on effect, really, for how we manage our children. And more than that, in the 19th, we've never, as a society, we have never spent more time with our children. In the 1970s, your children were told to kind of leave, don't come back until 5 o'clock, whereas that's kind of frowned upon now. So we have these burdens of having to pay the bills because we have to, it's not an option, and having to be with our children all the time because now parenting advice is that, we need to have them close and nurture. And, you've also got to do all of the housework. And for the rest, for some of us, we have quite demanding careers. Like, I don't know about you, but my career, my work does not end when I leave hospital. I've got papers to do, I've got audits to do. And the reality is there is no magic tablet for this. And the thing that I always think is you just cannot do everything. So something is going to get squeezed. So it's like Monroe Kelly doctrine, really. It's like, what is going to get squeezed? That's the question. So that's why I'm at 70%. And if I continued to get squeezed, I would drop to 50%. So the children are the most important thing to me in the world. And for me, I really like having small children. So I've got a 12-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old. I am not here to miss nativities. I am not here to miss, important milestones in their life, because my career will be there, hopefully, 30 years' time. So they're the most important thing to me. So they always come first around kind of what I can manage with my career. When things get squeezed, for me, the thing that gets squeezed is the housework. Like, my house is a mess. We used to have a cleaner. You kind of have to outsource something. So I know that a lot of consultants have nannies and things like that. That doesn't really work for me. For me, we have a great parenting team, Ash and I. We try and manage everything together. It's really important to me that he's on board with doing things like the housework. He does a lot of the pickups and drop-offs because my career is more inflexible than he is. I have to be at work for 7:30 because I'm a surgeon. And in terms of managing it all, the first thing that I do is to be really kind to myself. I am, one of my first duties to these children is to keep them safe. And that is to pay the bills for this house. So I often feel like when I'm at work, I'm not good enough at work. And then when I'm at home, I often feel like I'm not good enough mother either. And then I just have the conversation with myself is that I'm doing the best that I can to give them everything that I can in our unique circumstance. I go to work to pay the bills, to allow them to live the life that they live. We live in a nice house, we live in a nice area, we have holidays. I'm doing that for them. And then, I just try and be really, I think being kind to yourself is the key. You cannot do it all. You cannot necessarily be the mom who volunteers to do reading at school, because that's just not something that I can do. And I just try and always say to myself, but I am giving them other things. I'm showing them ambition. I'm showing them what you can achieve at school. I'm showing them a career that I love. So the key thing, I think, is just to be really kind to yourself, and planning as well. You need to plan everything.
It sounds like you're an incredible mum. And I really love that you shared there about not doing everything yourself, outsourcing some things. And I don't know if you've heard this before. I'm not sure who it was that said it. It was something about life is like a juggling act, especially when you've got kids, and that you've got all these balls in the air.
Yeah.
But some of the balls are made of glass and some of them are, rubber bouncy balls. As long as you don't drop the glass balls and you know which ones the glass balls are, you're going to be okay. The other balls can drop and it doesn't matter too much.
100% true. And
really
that's why the cleaning is a rubber ball,
Yeah.
So what? Your house will be spick and span 20 years from now when your children don't return your calls, at university. It's okay to let stuff drop. It's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about having your priorities in order, isn't it? And you sound like you've absolutely got that nailed. And I also really, something that I took from what you just said there is the fact that you're already at 70%, but you know that if there is more of that squeeze, that you are willing to go down to 60 or 50, that you've got some capacity there for change if you need it. And that
Yeah.
must give you like a real sense of, I don't know, safety, that things can change if you need them to.
Yeah, and I think it's about understanding your limitations. Like, there are people who went to med school who want to be a consultant by the time they're kind of in their early 30s, and that's their journey, and that is fine for them, and I salute them for that. But I would love that. If I could wave a magic wand, I would love to be a consultant, but that is not my journey. And that's okay. And I think a lot of what we're talking about comes down to a level of self-acceptance and self-love about what you're able to provide, and to, I think, have gratitude for what you are providing. However much you earn, whether it's a consultant salary or an F1 salary, you are doing that for yourself based on the crazy stuff we learned at medical school. Someone is paying me to be a doctor. That's crazy to me. And that is something that I am doing for my family. And no, I can't, do it all. I do forget things. Like, I've sent my son to school on a normal uniform day, thinking it was non-uniform day, and he was really embarrassed. And I have forgotten things like baking days. And that's okay, because I'm not the stay-at-home mom who has it on the calendar. I'm trying to manage a million things, and that is okay. My children are fine.
Yeah, baking day is a rubber ball for sure.
Yeah.
And also, I think something that I think a lot about with us who did graduate entry medicine, that I think we have as an advantage compared to the people that did medicine as an undergrad, is that we've all come from different backgrounds. And when we started the GEM course, the graduate entry medicine course, everyone had these different degrees, different lives. Some people have had whole full-blown careers before they came and studied medicine.
Yeah.
And so we already had this mindset of, I'm not following the straight and narrow path. I'm not on a set timeline. I'm doing life differently. Whereas I think the undergraduates who go into medical school at 18 have a disadvantage, because they feel like they have to do things in a certain order, and they're at the same level as their peers, and it almost feels like a race for a lot of them to get to that consultant position. You have to work full time, you have to jump through all the hoops. But we have the advantage of knowing that we're all in our own lanes, and we are not going down any sort of straight and narrow path. We are taking side shoots, we're taking detours, we're getting lost, we're doing all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
I think it's a real privilege.
I think so too. Yeah.
So 2 more questions for you. The first is, what would you say? Lots of people in my audience, and obviously pretty much all the people in my membership, are burnt out and struggling. What would you say to somebody who is burnt out right now? Any advice?
Oh, I almost felt emotional when you said that, because I've been there, and it's really soul destroying, because I think that you're in a position where you've had to bend over backwards to be where you are, right? You've worked really hard wherever you are on your journey. You've worked really hard to be here. And I think there's a lot of feelings of shame around burnout, like, oh, why can't I cope when everyone else is? And the first thing is that almost everyone gets burnt out anyway. Just because you're burnt out now, they might have been burnt out 2 years ago, or they might be burnt out in 5 years. This has happened to you. It's fine. It's almost like getting a cold or getting COVID or flu, right? You've got yours now. And I have been there, and it's really difficult, I think, because as medics, we are copers, otherwise we wouldn't be here. So you coped through stress in your A levels, otherwise you would have, flunked your A levels, you wouldn't be here. You coped through medical school and you got through it, and you've been coping through wherever you are in your career. So you're a coper, and then all of a sudden, and you feel like you're not coping. And that is almost an alien emotion to us, because we've fought that all the way through. We have fought that. We are not that person. We are this person. We're going through. And I think you reach a point where you need to say to yourself, all right, this is too much. And that's okay. Because basically what we've done, and we are awful for this, is that we have normalized our achievements, right? I'm a surgeon. That means nothing to me. Everyone around me is a surgeon. I don't feel particularly special. Sarah, you and I are both doctors. We don't feel particularly special about that, because everyone we know is a doctor, right? Everyone we know got through med school. If you take a step back, what we have achieved and what we are doing day to day is remarkable. Almost no one can do what we do. But we forget that because we have normalized our achievements. We've forgotten how hard we worked for our A levels. We've forgotten how hard our third year OSCE was. We've forgotten how hard F1 was. And now we're just like, oh, well, everyone else in the department is fine. That's not the case. You know, we are incredible people who have dragged a massive like load up a really steep hill like Mount Everest. And at some point, you reach the point where you're just like, okay, I'm kind of done and I can't go on anymore. And that's okay. And I think the first step with burnout is to be kind to yourself and to say, I'm incredible. I've done amazing things, but I've reached a point where my body is now telling me that I need to stop. And that's kind of where I was with kind of the stopping sleeping. So I would say the first thing that you need to do is take a step back for everything. So, you know, everything that you can manage to take a step back from, you need to kind of stop. And if that means being signed off, then do that. You know, your department, you know, I'm at the moment struggling with some feelings because I'm new to the department and I've gone off, you know, with, you know, mental health thing, and I feel small and I feel judged and I feel vulnerable about that. And what I'm doing is at the moment, I'm working through that process of saying to myself, stop. And my friend, actually, a friend of mine who Sarah and I went to medical school with, I told her that I felt that. And what she said was, isn't it funny how the brain does that to us? And I think that's so true. And so as I appreciate, I have these emotions and they are there and I validate them. But in my head, I know that it's perfectly safe and okay for me to take this time off. And what I would say is, if you have taken time off, do not rush back to work. If you need to take more time, what you need to do is get this sorted before you go back. And what is often available to you is also a stage return. Don't throw yourself back in the deep end because it does take a long time to heal from burnout. So I would say deal with it acutely, take time off if you need it, step back from projects, try and get yourself right, look at things like your diet, exercise. I'm a big proponent of being out for what I call green spaces, lots of walking, lots of green spaces, very good for the mind. Make sure that you've got any kind of hobby that you used to be interested in that you've let go by the wayside. You know, that is an initial sign of burnout, in my opinion. If these things start falling away, try and pick those things up if you can. If you have any symptoms of concurrent depression, things like that, then you need to go to your GP and seek medical advice. And that's fine because it happens, you know, to everyone. And then, you know, if you've got a partner or family support and you've got children or anything like that, it's really okay to go to your family and say, look, I need more help with this and I'm struggling. Because ultimately you can't function, you're not functioning. And that's okay. So seek that help if you have it. And then as you start to recover, what you need to do is learn. We need to relearn. There's a reason that one of the first words that toddlers learn is no. And, you know, in my department at the moment, I've gone into a new department. And one of the things that I find about new departments is, other than you're very anonymous in a big department, which has its pros and cons, but in small departments, they often like you to take on lots of extra responsibilities. So I started and I've already been asked to do a teaching presentation within, you know, 3 weeks of coming back to be prepared in my own time. And also been asked to volunteer for M&M, the morbidity meeting, which is also to be done in my own time. And these things aren't really optional. And so there are often things like that in our lives where people might come up to you and say, do you want to do this project? Do you want to do this overtime shift? You're not in a position to be taking that on at the moment. You know, you're kind of going back into kind of like, you know, hibernating squirrel mode, and you're just kind of poking your head out of the tree. Learn to say no. Think if you're applying for a certain application, like I talk to a lot of people wanting to do CST and things like that. If you're offered a project and it does not fit your aims for your career, why are you doing it? You know, I talked earlier about having time for fun and silly things. If you're doing a project that's eating into that, it needs to be paying you, okay? So that's fine if it's for your CST application and it's your audit and it's going to give you 5 extra points or whatever, great, you know, fine, that's paying you. But if it's, you know, something that's burdensome, even if it's not a medical related thing, you know, if your uncle wants you to come and do something, or, you know, you're being asked to look after someone's children or whatever it is, if it's not paying you, it's not for you. Don't do it, especially right now. So learning to say no is really important. Making sure that you've got time for family and friends, because family and friends are really important and they can be one of the first things that go, I can't come out because I'm too busy doing this thing. Okay, well, again, that's a warning sign of burnout. So make sure if you're that kind of socially minded, and I'm not really, I'm very, very introverted. And for me, being at home, that's kind of my family and friends. But for other people, it's really important that you do that. So for me, burnout really is a combination of dealing with the acute insult, which can be involved with, seeing your GP, taking the time that you need, cutting back on absolutely everything. And then in terms of going forward, especially for the next 6 months to the year, I think you need to be very, you need to kind of tread tentatively with yourselves. Do say no. Don't work the overtime shifts. Make sure that as a priority, you are seeing people for kind of a brunch, people that care about you. Pick up your hobbies. And then, so for me, after that, I developed kind of a traffic light system of kind of maintaining myself. And if I stop, doing kind of the things that are important to me, like I have no time for reading, I have no time for family, friends, or painting, or reading, or writing, then I start on that. I know that I'm on that slope towards burnout, and I'm stopping it here before I get to here. That's generally how I approach burnout.
Oh my goodness, so much valuable information in there, and love your
Oh, I hope
traffic
it's
light
not too
system.
much. I've spent a lot of time thinking about
Amazing.
burnout.
Yeah, well, it shows. And, actually having been through it yourself, you know what it feels like. It's not just like, oh, this is the academic research on it and this is the evidence. Like, this is actual, tangible, useful stuff for day-to-day life. And so much of what you said there is about your own priorities. And like we talked about before, following your own path, learning. What I've realized as a doctor is that because we are highly trained and we do work so hard. We're in demand more than we would be otherwise. Everyone wants a piece of us. Everyone wants something from us.
We're givers.
We
We're
are
givers.
givers.
We're taught to give,
Exactly.
especially
And
as women. Oh, we give.
exactly. And the more that we progress in our careers, the more people will want from us. And that's fine. That's something that's there, that's on other people. But it's like you were saying there about learning to say no, like a toddler. It's our job to learn how to say no and what to say no to, and to keep our
Learn.
eyes on what's important to us, keep those glass balls in the air and let everything else fall away. And I really also appreciated what you said there about your support network and having time with friends and family, because burnout is so isolating, and
Yes.
we're a social species, aren't we? We need that connection. We need that support. So thank you for, like, that's just gold. I want to just package up everything you just said and like send it out to everyone who's burnt out so they can all listen to all of your advice there. Is really beautiful. Um, Final question is, where can people find you? You've got loads of great content online. Where can people see it?
So I've just changed. I was going to say it's very easy because it's just the surgical doctor on YouTube and Instagram, but I've just gone to at Dr LaurenJane on Instagram because I have progressed as a human. So that's part of my own kind of journey, spiritual journey towards who I am.
So Dr. LaurenJane on Instagram, and the surgical doctor still on YouTube.
Yeah,
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I think this is going to be super valuable for everyone who watches it, and I really appreciate you giving up some of your time for this.
thank you.
And I've enjoyed looking at your beautiful background there with all the gorgeous paintings and everything else you got going on there. It's stunning.
Incredible.
So I hope you enjoyed this interview with Dr. LaurenJane. Make sure you leave a comment down below, leaving her some love and support, and don't forget to go and follow her channel. If you've enjoyed this video, we talked a lot about self-care, so I'll link this video right here, which is your ultimate self-care guide. You are going to find this very, very helpful. I hope you enjoy it. Take care, guys. Bye.